right, are we ready for Behind the Scenes 10?
Behind the screen.
Behind the screen?
It's a play on like the DM screen.
I get it.
All right, making sure.
You didn't last time.
New
You
girl.
didn't last time.
He's got a point. You didn't last time. We let it slide, but this is if we're going to be continuing. We should.
You get one.
I'm going to try.
The intro?
I
Okay.
didn't listen to episode 9, so I don't know how it sounded.
Sounded good. You came in with fire. I left in the beginning blooper. Did you check it out?
You left my blooper?
Yeah.
You always. Why do you do that to me?
I did like a record scratch after it because you were like
The record scratches make it funny.
Yeah. It was because you were like, I just want to do it. You were like, I suck at these. I just want to do it like I do. I want to do it slow. I want to do it like, hey everyone, welcome. And then we went into the PBS. This isn't PBS or And it was like, And then you came in with the energy, and it sounded great.
You should totally do the PBS one now. The NPR. We should all do it for like the first 5 minutes.
No way. Turn us off immediately.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Behind the Screen. I'm here tonight with my husband, Jonathan Marshall,
Hello.
and my brother-in-law, Charlie Marshall.
Greetings.
My name is Christy Lee Marshall. We will be discussing episodes 21, 22, and 23 tonight.
Yes.
The Marshall edition.
Yes.
Marshall edition.
M cubed.
21, 22, 23 should be easy enough. It was all pretty much like one episode and one really long episode.
Yeah, one long city episode, yeah.
I like the city episodes.
Same here.
Yeah, they're
I like
fun. We get to have a lot of fun with them.
I think I prefer like the ratio of more role playing to like maybe 2/3, like two role playing to 1 combat.
Oh, I think I get a little more anxious than that.
Really?
Yeah, I try very, very hard to never express it because I know it'll always balance itself out. But I get anxious.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to try to force a certain ratio or anything.
Yeah.
You get anxious for more combat or for more
yeah.
role playing?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe because it could also be that I'm the newest player of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm sure there's
been
get
people who
introduced-
started after you.
I love new creatures. I love a new creature. Like, I get so excited every single time. As a matter of fact, when I listen to the episodes and I laugh at how fucking animated I am when something's new. I'm like, ooh, look at that.
Oh, when we see the pictures of them?
Yeah. I think of, like, the ghouls. And I was like, oh,
Right. Yeah.
God.
No, it's definitely fun, like running into a new monster and being able to use like a lot of what we prepare for is for combat, and it's really fun getting to use that stuff. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a sucker for the more character-driven, like learning more about everybody's characters and seeing how they act in different situations.
I could definitely get on board with that. Well, why don't we take a second real quick before we dive into this, and let's entertain this topic for a second. Now, do you think there's a way to perhaps make our combats bring our combats a little bit more into that realm of character development?
I think there's room.
Yeah.
I don't think
even
it's
think
always
that we
easy.
try sometimes.
We do sometimes, but I just wonder, I don't think we ever really attempt to push any envelope with it, but I wonder if we actually sat down and
made a deliberate effort.
To like really bring out some character development during a combat.
Now, do you
That'd be
think
interesting?
Do you think that could get dangerous if you try too hard to incorporate your character's personality traits in combat? Like maybe you would be putting them at risk in some way?
Yeah,
or...
but we don't even need to. I think there's even other ways. I think it would extend the combat, but if the combat is so roleplay heavy that it's entertaining enough, then it shouldn't matter how long the combat is.
And I mean, I feel like as far as what decisions are being made, at least when it comes to like what I choose to do in a round, I try to have that be in character.
Yeah.
Even though I don't express the like I think What I'm thinking of more is like expressing the character during combat. Like
Why
having-
your character
while
is
you-
taking
Yeah.
his
while your
action.
character's taking his actions.
Copernicus, Swaney. He
Yeah.
does
He does a
that.
pretty good job,
He's
yeah.
pretty good at
I
that.
think for the most part, we all every now and again explain our action, give a reason why we do what we do.
That's true, but that's not ideal. I mean, ideally, you'd rather show than tell,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
you'd rather act it out than explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely do a
course.
lot of Irame is going tos.
Oh, I
during-
do the same thing with Quincy.
Yeah.
But I think that's better than
Nothing.
throwing it
Yes.
out the window.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm thinking more on lines of Irame is going to do this because lately with everything that's been going on in this, you know what I mean? Just kind of going into it in a little bit more detail as to why Irame decided to.
Yep. I think
Take
that
that
certainly has a place. I mean, like when you read books, right? If you're reading a book, sometimes like it'll go into that, you know, there'll be like a half a page or whatever going
Explanation,
into that
sort of.
character's,
Thought
motivations
process
and
right.
thought process before they make their decision.
I find that when in combats, if anyone goes down, even though Irame is not a healer, her personality trait always kicks in right away for me when I see someone go down. Irame immediately wants to go help them, whether it's going to be good for the fight or not. It's very hard for me to be like, strategically, you should just try to kill this guy before he
Right.
kills your friend, rather than run to your
I've
friend.
noticed that and I wasn't sure if it was an Irame trait or a Christie trait. If you were freaking out every time somebody fell, I'm like, they get a couple more death saves. Even though I'm the healer in the group.
Yeah, yeah. I just think that Irame would always that would panic her. That would make her nervous.
Well, to be fair, it gets tough if you are the healer. Or I don't even like to say that because I feel like in 5e they kind of steer you away from that kind of holy trinity that everybody is accustomed to, at least to a degree. There's definitely more healer classes there's definitely more classes that can put on a really powerful healer hat as well as a good DPS hat or something. You know, there's a lot of crossover ability.
Oh yeah, and to clarify, I mean, I'm not a primarily a healer.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, that's just something I can do.
But that being said, let's say you were the relied upon healer. Should that happen? Should the event unfold in that way?
Which I think Quincy is. Yeah.
Quincy is, and tell me, it does get frustrating if the players kind of become a little bit too reliant on that, to where they're kind of acting a bit more recklessly than they would normally. They're taking more hits than they should be. They're just playing a little bit more brazen, I guess.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I think I can go both ways. I think I've seen it both ways. For example, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there was the fight, maybe with the Assassin Vine, where I went to rush in to lay a heal on Zavril, and he
Backed out.
bailed out.
Right.
Retreating,
What the fuck?
You know?
Yep. That's true. Yeah. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword there in that regard.
Right. But I mean, as long as everybody's doing what they want to be doing, I don't think that there's a right way, you know?
Well, I think the right way would be if everybody came out of it alive. You know, I think the only time it becomes the wrong way is if somebody died, and it's like, that didn't have to happen.
No, I guess I just have maybe it's because I've had characters die before, and I just kind of think that the way it happens is the way it happens, and that's the way people are playing for whatever reason. That's the way people are playing their characters, and regardless of the outcome, we all know that's part of the game,
Right.
you know. And I personally don't tend to hold like grudges or like be upset.
No,
if a character
you
dies. I already have 6 backup characters for Quincy. You know what I mean?
You let Irame die, and I stop inviting you over. You come over.
Well, people do get attached, and I can understand it, but I would be excited to see how that would pivot the story and what new character can be introduced.
Sure. At the same time, there's got to be a small part of you that at least hopes for not necessarily a hero's death or heroic or epic death, but a meaningful something to write home about, or a story.
If it was something lame, that would suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if Irma drowned
or died
that day.
I would think like a shivering sickness or something. You have the shivering sickness and you fail your save and you die from something stupid because you only had 5 hit points.
But I think that could be helped by the GM, honestly. So if somebody contracts shivering sickness, instead of like rolling it and being like, oh, well, you're not going to make it, you could make it a dramatic couple of in-game days where the death is occurring, and everybody knows
these
that
friends
this person's
are losing,
dying, and it could be played out.
Someone.
You know what I mean? And granted, like, to come up with that off the top of your head in game is challenging, and not everything is easy to deal with. Is that one case? There's always
it would have to be situational.
It would have to
you
be
might not be in a situation to have those kind of remaining days to kind of dramatize it, I guess.
Right.
It might be like a high octane few episodes and the dude's just in the corner shivering to death, and while everyone else is like.
But in that case, maybe like after or in between sessions, like I think there is a sense in which you could have aftershocks sort of retroactively give meaning to the death.
And I think we do. I think we utilize that, maybe not necessarily in a death scenario, but in other ways to get story across.
Yep.
What do we got starting out for episode 21? That was the one we opened.
We opened up episode 21 with Zavrel's monologue.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
During which, actually, I had a question about this. You mentioned something of a shadow realm or some sort of dark place or shadow realm that,
some kind of dark lands.
Yeah, is shadows. It's a dark.
Oh, you're talking about when Zavrel was, yes.
So you mentioned within the law within.
So wait, clue me in. This is when Zavrel's investigating.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, he's on his way to investigate.
Okay.
This monologue is happening, and within it is mentioned a shadow realm. Can you tell us any more about that place? Because it wasn't. It was detailed and simultaneously kind of vague. Can you tell us more about that place and why Zavrel would even be familiar with it?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely. That whole scene, I guess I'll start right from the beginning with that. With Zavrel, with describing Zavrel, this is the reason we formatted it in such a way, is because I think the image we wanted for the listeners anyway is we obviously wanted his destination to unfold as he was getting there, to the point where some of the viewers that were a little bit more attentive, I guess, would be picking up on it quickly and be like, wait a minute, is he going, isn't that where Copernicus went? They might be kind of following these leads, and then other people, eventually everybody would get it, and it would be a cool little, reveal. But then we needed something to describe during that trek, to kind of make it flow better, make the journey from the 3C shipping up to that plateau where the ritual was cast a little bit more streamlined and detailed and informational. The reason why I chose that was perfect for Zavrel is because it was great content based on Zavrel as a character. He's a monster hunter, specifically an undead hunter. And the place I was describing, I was excited to get out there for those who aren't as familiar with D&D and some of the other some of the multiverse surrounding the world that we're all playing in. It's a land called the Shadowfell, and typically it's it's a land of negative energy. It's a plane of negative energy, and it's typically that energy is where like the undead would dwell or even come from. I'm mostly paraphrasing all this,
Yeah.
so the specifics, don't quote me on it, but it's a place where, as an undead hunter,
I don't have to quote you on it. It's recorded.
well, don't go telling other people that it's as gospel.
Nobody listened to this episode.
I figured that Zavril, as an undead hunter, would be not only familiar with it, but kind of intimate with the Shadowfell. Almost like the home of your most hated enemy. How you would have a passion and vast knowledge of that place. And him discovering clues that related to the Shadowfell was enough for him to dedicate his time away from you guys to begin this investigation. And of course, the whole Sybil thing, he was kind of brought into it by surprise. I don't remember which episode, but it was kind of like a who is this person? One of those moments when Sybil had appeared in the tomb beneath Taguda village, because Zavril was sleeping the first night Sybil had arrived. So since that kind of surprise meeting where everybody was already somewhat familiar with Sybil, Zavril was still kind of quietly, while surprised, and he did kind of mention it a little bit, he decided to kind of bite his tongue a bit and take the quiet approach, more investigative approach.
So I'm not going to ask you right out what if Sybil's undead, but does Zavril have reason to believe that Sybil's undead?
Not necessarily undead. The Shadowfell is a little bit more of a wider umbrella. Sybil, by definition, I think, as a warlock's entity, is especially Copernicus's warlock is pretty much the dark energy that would be found in a sentient magical weapon. I don't know what kind of, definitely not undead, but definitely extraplanar, or
right.
in a dark way too. It's this one specifically. I think you can kind of get into the weeds as to where there's extraplanar being comes from, and whether it's from the Shadowfell or from the what's the other one, the Fey realm. Feywild, yeah.
Or even if it was originally from there. Could be trapped there and not from there. Or
from the elemental planes. There's no reason why it couldn't be, This specifically, Sybil is definitely at least enveloped in the Shadowfell for one reason or another. And it could be her life leading up to what she had become. We have plenty of time to bring that out into the forefront, but I felt it was a good time to introduce the Shadowfell. But
so that's how the series of role-playing episodes opens up.
Yep, is with this scene. That's right. Well, because remember, we were missing Zavril too. He had to go on that emergency call. So
actually, while Zavril's doing this, we're in town, essentially, buying our clothes and getting ready for dinner.
Yep.
At the end of the monologue, we find Zavril investigating Copernicus's summoning circle.
Yeah, his ritual site, what have you.
I don't know if you guys saw, I tried to mock up a picture of the summoning circle. It's the only place I posted it was on Steemit, because in Steemit I put a picture with every episode, All
right.
But, you should take a look at it. I'm not sure how I feel. I had to darken it a lot, to get rid of some stuff that was in the stock photo that I chose. But anyway.
Yeah, I'll take a peek at it. I'm sure it's not bad.
So after the monologue, we find Zavril investigating Copernicus's summoning circle. This sort of puts Zavril and Copernicus at ends. Why do that? Almost like you created a conflict for the two of them.
I could see the concern with like I don't know if I would use the term PvP, but I think that's where you're going with it. I think if done correctly, a little turmoil or in strife between party members is awesome and exciting, and it also creates moments of humility, coming back as even stronger friends. You know, I think whenever there's conflict, it just opens the door for a much wider range of emotions. The trick is to, I'm assuming where you're going with it, is to not let it interfere with the flow of the game or the fun of the other players, like it always tends to do when another player's being a dick to another player.
Well, it's actually, and to be more specific, it's a character conflict. You know, it's not like us as players are having a conflict. It's a conflict with the characters inside of the game. I guess my question is,
that's true as long as the players are able to keep their characters separate from their own feelings.
Yeah.
Even then, I think there needs to be a certain level of metagaming involved to where
you're not going to allow that to disrupt what the normal progression of our campaign would be.
Exactly. I think you need to decide early on what the end goal is. And the end goal, in my opinion, should be, I want this to be a great story arc about building a relationship between my character and your character. It always helps to talk to the other person.
Do you think that Zavril, do you think that Kevin and James spoke about this relationship between?
Nope, but I'll touch on that shortly after. So that's why do it. That's why you would want to do something like that, because it opens the door for a great story. How you do it depends. You definitely want to do it delicately with the goal, not necessarily the goal to, I'm going to be that asshole, I'm going to steal from this other player and just kind of make the game kind of shitty for everybody. I don't think there's all too many people that enjoy that kind of gameplay, and if you are at a table and everybody's cool with that and everyone has fun doing that, then you should definitely do that. You should definitely know who you're playing with if you're going to be pulling any kind of shenanigans like that. The other thing, what you were just asking about, Chuck, I think the exception is if you're not going to talk to the other person about it, if you want them to be as surprised, if you want it to be a little bit more organic, I think you need to know the person well enough. I think we all know each other well enough and our intentions. I think we all have that goal inherently understood. And I think you can get away with doing that when you have that kind of intimate knowledge about the other player. You know that person deep down inside is going to default to, I know he's only going to take it as far as he needs to build this relationship and not start fucking up my character and shit, you know what I mean?
And I'll tell you, like, Quincy's been feeling this similar apprehension with Copernicus, and I haven't spoken with James about it at all. We have not coordinated one bit, and neither have I coordinated with Kevin. So our characters are independently, and without knowing that the other character, without knowing the other character's suspicion, we're independently sort of building a distrust
and I think that is the proper and best way to experience that. But I think if you don't have that intimate knowledge of the people you're playing with, then and you still want to do something like that, then I think that talking to the other person beforehand could help in that situation, so they don't get this misconception that you're out to get them or just trying to make their game time miserable. You know what I mean? Because that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Up until this point, too, Irme has been. Or not up until this point and beyond. Irme has not felt that suspicion of Copernicus. She's been very just positive about it. Irme is almost irritatingly positive a lot of the time. She definitely always sees good
Yep.
in
Part
people.
of her character.
Yep. So after Zavril, while at the pit, or no, not the pit. I apologize. Zavril, after investigating, or while investigating the circle, he meets Clem.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Zavril meets Clem for
So,
the first time.
yep.
Clem enters the scene.
Yep, she's a half-orc and a member of the Flaming Fist. However, through her interaction with Zavril, it definitely appears that she is here on personal business, not
on behalf of
the Flaming Fist. And even if she is, like if the Flaming Fist has been alerted to Copernicus's presence here, she doesn't express it really in any way.
Right. Yeah, I think early on, I don't think you guys were ever completely sold that if she was in fact working with the Flaming Fist, that the Flaming Fist as well as was with her in this regard. I think for the most part, listening back and even during, you guys were pretty consistent about the idea that this was
personal.
She was working on the side, that this was
Right.
more of a side goal than the Flaming Fist's goal.
I'd agree, but at the same time, just knowing that she has that connection still introduces the risk of if things don't work out for us.
Which
Yep.
Yeah.
which fits her
Exactly.
character very well. I mean, that's exactly what she wanted us.
Yeah.
She wanted to rattle us.
She was trying to leverage that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it would have worked.
Had it not been for you meddling kids.
for you meddling kids with your invisibility spells.
Then Zavril returns, and we return. Everybody gets back together at the Three Sheets,
The 3 sheets shipping.
the Three Sheets to the Wind, the 3 Seas Shipping and Freight Company. We all get back. Zavril tells Copernicus about Clem, and Copernicus is completely blown away. He thought Clem was dead because, after all, he did push her out of a 3-story
3-story building. So,
which
3d6 points of damage.
exactly, which in game, Quincy points out that is.
Well, it was more.
Yeah, Charlie
more
points
that
out.
I put
You
it,
said
yeah.
it in Quincy's voice.
you did say it in Quincy's voice.
Yeah, I think
That is but
sometimes.
that is 3d6 points.
Good God!
She very well could be alive. But he was so adamant. He was like, "No, that's impossible. I watched her die. She fell from a 3-story building."
So
You should have picked a higher number.
yeah. So in reality, death from 3 stories isn't certain, right? But it's definitely a lot more harmful than 3 stories in D&D, I'd imagine, right? Am I thinking wrong there?
In like the real world,
Yeah.
first responder style, if you fall 3 times your height, like you could fall any distance and it could cause some serious damage. But if
absolutely.
you fall 3 times your height, like any responder on the scene is automatically going to assume that there's some kind of like spinal, neck, or head injury, like something serious.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So, and that's what I was thinking. So that's seriously seems a lot more high risk in reality. So when you're storytelling, right, and like Copernicus was doing with Clem,
Yeah.
that seems like, of course she's dead. I dropped her out of a 3-story building. She looked dead. That's believable. Now, when you said that, though, it did make me think, like, sometimes maybe through storytelling in D&D, if you're not quite thinking mechanically, you might not give...
You might not
right-
get your message across.
Yeah.
No, and I know.
I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but how do you blur that line between storytelling and
Mechanic.
I think it's the
mechanics?
wrong. So I think there's a wrong decision. I mean, I think there's a wrong impression to be had there. I think, reasonably speaking, even in mechanical terms, most NPCs aren't going to have 18 hit points, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Most normal people, because our characters are heroes, they're better than the average person. So most NPCs, most like normal
Most of your
people,
commoners.
yeah, would have a lower number of hit points. But even that aside, assuming Clem was supposed to be somebody, like even assuming Clem was supposed to be somebody with a little more grit.
Let's almost, for the sake of our lack of information for her and the information we do have, let's just call her even with Copernicus.
So if
they
they're
were working
right,
equally on
right.
this job.
And when we met Copernicus, he was only level 3.
Right.
So, like, theoretically,
It could have
still killed her.
Yes.
Mechanically, but the real point is that when I brought up the mechanics, it was more of a joke. It was sort of like it was just making fun of it.
Oh no, absolutely.
But
it shut everybody down instantly, and it kind of made everybody realize that, not in a bad way, but everybody did kind of have this kind of washed over look on their face, like, and even Copernicus quickly, it was a 10-story building.
Yeah, well, because it does, though. It makes, like, if you're, I'm certain she's dead. I drove a sword, through her side.
Right.
You can say that, and that's how the story ends, but
Right.
that doesn't mean she's dead.
Right.
So it's kind of tough to tell a tale within a tale because of the mechanics at times, I guess.
Yeah.
Right, but I think that there can be a reasonable separation between the mechanics and the story when it doesn't affect the outcome of what's happening right now. Like, if you're talking about something that happened in the past, I mean, you could even justify it mechanically if you wanted
Absolutely,
to. I'm sure
yeah.
you could find a way.
Of course he's dead. I stabbed him in the head.
Right.
So you think
But
it's
the
more in
dagger
the
only-
wording? You
Yeah.
think maybe perhaps he should have chose, instead of a 3-story building, he could have just left it vague, like, I watched her fall from a great
I mean,
distance.
if he was worried about it, I mean, really what I think is, like, it should have just been a chuckle, and it shouldn't have mattered, and we could have moved on, because, like,
It is an interesting point. I can actually name another situation that happens to me sometimes as a DM where that exact same situation occurs. And the first time that it's ever happened was when we first launched the Out of the Abyss campaign, and you guys had met up you guys were talking to the caravan. I forget their names. The husband and wife, they had the wagon.
Yep.
And in mid-conversation, while you're talking, that an encounter began with an arrow piercing him in the eye and killing him. Just
Right.
Boom, dead. Whereas mechanically, I should have rolled to hit. I should have rolled
no,
damage.
not necessarily.
but then you're like, that's such a great theatrical effect.
Right,
That's
right.
like,
And that's why I do
so
it.
there's the line.
The mechanics should be there for us to feel like we have some measure of reasonable expectation for our actions.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be there to dictate every
outcome.
physical outcome in
Right.
the entire universe. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that actually right now just made me think of another sort of question. So there's been times, and I actually can't think of one specifically with us, but in the Pathfinder campaign that you're doing right now, Charlie, where someone has said that they're specifically aiming for an eyeball, or like they're going for a kill shot. They want to put it down. Is there ever a time that you give somebody a kill shot that you don't necessarily roll on, that you're like, okay, well, if you roll high enough, we'll just give it to you type thing, for those sort of
Yeah, I don't hand them
moments?
out like it's Halloween.
Well,
but
no,
I do-
obviously
Well,
not.
it used
Yeah.
to be, in second edition, it used to be if you aim for the head, you get a minus 8 on your
there
attack
was
roll or
like
something
different
like that.
body,
Yeah, you
there's
make it more difficult.
Absolutely.
make it more difficult to maybe provide a damage modifier of some
Mm-hmm.
kind. But yeah, I would totally.
There's like a called shot or something like that.
Yeah. And I remember that too, and not just in 2E, but in other games as well. They have similar.
Yeah, when you aim with a goal, actually in Camp Righteous, 6 aims to maim somebody, not specifically not to kill somebody, but she crit on it, so she,
Right.
the damage was high and done.
I actually, if we can, I wanted to revisit this when we talked about it last BTS, but and I thought I missed my opportunity, but since you brought it up again, could an argument be made that if she crit and her intention was to maim,
I thought that when we
wouldn't
were
she
playing.
be able to choose because of
How to maim,
or it was a perfect maim?
Yeah, I think
Right?
I definitely think that
There's a
there's
case
a
there.
solid case there.
When we were playing, there was a moment where I thought it was going to go that way. And when it
Like
didn't,
if her
I was like,
intent is to
okay.
maim and she nailed a 20, then her
Right.
intent is delivered
Right.
Yeah,
in spades.
So maybe there should be like I mean, crit charts are all house rules anyway, right? There's no crit chart in the official rule
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
right?
I'm more so amongst our table.
Right. So at our table, when we roll a crit, we roll from the chart, and that's what happened. If your intent was different, maybe we should have the option to say,
Right.
like, this is what I was going for.
If she had thought of it on the spot, it would have been a hands down give it to her. Like if she
Yeah.
was like, "Well, I intended to maim and I got a 20, could I just maim him?"
Right,
I would have
make
been
the
like,
case, yeah.
"Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes
Yep.
perfect
yeah,
sense."
can we skip the crit chart
Right.
and like have this?
Yeah, it was just anyway.
Intentional
I had
outcome.
thought of it after the fact, and
No, I like
it was
that.
worth bringing it up.
I think it adds, whether it's to maim or, some sort of headshot or, it adds something theatrical to it or
yeah.
dramatic.
I agree.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. So,
We all end up eavesdropping on this conversation between Zavril and Copernicus.
yeah,
Irame first. I mentioned that I'm listening. I kind of wanted to take a second to talk about our reactions there. Irame immediately has Copernicus's back. She's just immediately like, I am an enemy of Baldur's Gate then.
I thought it happened during the episode pretty organically, the way it was almost expected. I think Arame kind of took me off guard a little bit with it, but as far as Quincy's response, anybody who's been following along his story, he's got family. He has deep rooted connections in Baldur's Gate, which should concern him regarding the Flaming Fists, I think. But as far as like Daniel Devitas. And I think even briefly Zimwabi came in for a second.
Honestly, like, we don't know a lot of Daniel Devitas's story.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe that's something that
all of us have
to learn.
an interesting reaction, though. Irame is
Yeah.
immediately like, I'll be a criminal for this new friend. No problem.
Yeah, that
And-
took me off
Fuck
guard.
And and Quincy's like, ooh, Quincy immediately wants to help his friend, of course, but he has a disclaimer. And even the way Zavril told Copernicus about Clem, Zavril didn't express the amount of... I don't think that Zavril properly conveyed the amount of malice Clem had towards Copernicus. I think he, whether intentionally or not, whether it was a telephone thing, lost something in translation, or if it was Zavril's mistrust a little bit of Copernicus.
I think my impression is that Zavril's just been around the block a little bit more and maybe doesn't put as much emphasis on that kind of thing. Like, for him, it may be a little more like he's seen it before.
Yeah.
Right. For him, he could have just been simply doing as he was asked to, delivering a message.
Maybe he doesn't have quite the emotional investment.
During that time, his interest was piqued at least enough. I think he did ask a couple why are you, if I may ask, looking for Copernicus? He at least did a little bit of groundwork. So that tells me that he was building an image of the situation, which then leads me to believe, which leads me to think that he at least was calculating how much emotion he should put into the delivery of the message. I don't know.
Right.
But-
And it's
Yeah.
going to be complicated for him. I mean, he's there investigating.
Right.
He's looking into like this involvement of Copernicus with this otherworldly entity. And then this person shows up. So like he's already not really sure where his connection with Copernicus rests, but then there's this whole new person that,
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you think of it as like an investigator situation, I think you're a normal, typical investigator would almost just take a step back and almost, you would think maybe
Try
from
to
the shadows
see.
follow this new lead to gather any information that he
Right.
could
Right.
that might help him in his own investigation. But it is an interesting concept, though. I didn't really think of it at the time.
Yeah, just everybody's sort of reaction to this happening when I was listening to it definitely sounded very interesting.
But ultimately, everybody went along with it.
Oh yeah, I think
Pretty much without a hitch.
You
There
know-
was a few I think there was a few jabs, a few,
yeah.
a few
Well, I think
playful.
the whole time we definitely had Copernicus's back. Even Zavril fully had his back, but there was still that sort of like, what the fuck,
yeah.
Right.
you know?
Like Copernicus is already sort of in a questionable light with his relationship and his goals. Why can I never remember her name?
Sybil?
With Sybil. But then this comes up. It sort of, it stacks on top of.
I didn't consider it before, but maybe a bit of a justification for Irame's immediate reaction to support Copernicus and fully is that she's sort of a risk to be around as well.
But none of us know that. But I could see how that would motivate.
As characters, you guys know I'm a wild mage now,
We know that. Mm-hmm. We know that.
and with that comes, and when
It
I
does come with risk,
that
yeah.
comes a risk to travel with me. And I believe actually when I expressed it, Copernicus was the one that was sort of like
standoffish.
about
think-
that, and I actually made a dig at Sybil
Right.
because he was like made a comment about not wanting to be in a canoe with
same
me,
boat.
and I was
Yeah,
like, should we
that's
get
good.
Sybil her own canoe? You know,
I
That's
think
a good point. I actually misinterpreted what you were saying. I
Yeah.
thought you meant regarding your family and whatnot.
But
No, yeah.
But I also think when Copernicus, I think his intent by doing that wasn't that he was legitimately concerned for everybody's safety. I think he was more so trying to misdirect the angst he's been feeling from the group and redirecting it to Arame, you know what I mean?
but Irame might find might empathize for Copernicus and know that just because with you comes some baggage doesn't mean that you're not going to have the group's best interests at heart.
I think
Because she does, and she thinks that Copernicus does too.
I think if Cappy's going to find an advocate anywhere in the group, it's going to be an Arame.
So after we learn about Clem, we discuss it a little bit as a group. We leave for dinner, and that brings us through town, essentially, where we stop at all our little NPCs that have exclamation marks above their heads.
City life and shit.
All the places that we wanted to stop or had
Well-
to clear up some things or collect a quest or something, we did. So we stopped to see Dushine.
Dushine. I was just going to mention him.
Yep.
You guys had, I think these episodes, and we are kind of blurring them together. We've been putting a lot of emphasis on this beginning scene and everything with 21, but for the most part, these 3 episodes in Nyanzaru, there was a lot going on. It was very sandboxy. You guys each had, for the most part, your own goals, and I wasn't really trying to push and prod in any one direction or another. And the Dushine scene was actually, I think Quincy and Copernicus wanted to push it, but I think Quincy more so at first because of the shoes for your sister.
Right.
Yes, yep. Quincy gets his sister shoes, and Copernicus actually gives Dushine the Yuan-Ti poison scimitar
Yep.
as a gift. Create some more bonds there.
Yeah, and this actually touches, I think, fairly well on the notion that where representatives of the 3 C's shipping and freight and this is how we're interacting with the community at large.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
Other
mean,
merchants.
other
Yes, we're
merchants,
giving
you know,
them business. We're supporting them.
And for Quincy, that's not just what it's about, right? He's not so caught up in the mission of the 3 C's shipping and freight. Like he genuinely appreciates Dushan. But he sees the two going hand in hand.
Right. Yep. I thought it was great. I mean, I didn't expect it. When you look back at the origin of Dushan, when I look back, he was literally
It was a random.
Yeah, I didn't
Literally
think he'd
just
be anything
off
of
the cuff.
consequence, you know?
He literally started as a guy who stepped in between a round to try to take a little bit of the heat off of you guys.
Yeah, I think you were scared that. Were you scared that we were taking too much?
Well,
Facing the ankylosaur?
I
He
don't
was
think I
there
don't
to
think I
take
would
some
call,
aggro.
I don't think I would call it scared.
Come on, you were scared.
I don't think I was as much of a scaredy cat as I may have come off. But when
I'll
looking,
give him an NPC to help him out.
yeah, but when looking at the CR, if you were to look at the CR and what level you guys were, there was definitely reason to it.
To be
This was
concerned.
your first combat too, so I
Yep.
had nothing to measure against. So I at least wanted to put a cushion in there should I need to fall back on that.
Right.
And that's pretty much where that came from.
But I love that. But I love the game for that reason, is because something as trivial as that becomes like
Oh yeah.
an ongoing.
Absolutely. I think we all do that well as a group. There's certain things I notice that we all really start to stick to, and then there's certain things that each character individually kind of holds on to. Quincy with Dushan, Irame with the Fey Dragon,
Simber.
Yep.
She connected with that a lot. And I think we all kind of pick and choose these little things, and John does a great job with circling. He picks up on when we like something, and he circles it back around for us.
I think it's key. I think I throw shit out to you guys all the time, and that's exactly what I do. If I sense zero interest in something, I'll let it go. There's no point in even if it's something I'm passionate about. And I feel like maybe, because sometimes, there might be a conversation going on, it just gets lost. If I feel it's that kind of situation, I'm passionate about the idea, I'll reintroduce it a little later in a different light. But otherwise, that's what I do. I listen to what you guys are what you guys attach to, and then I just try to keep that going, follow that lead. It makes my job easier. And I suggest if you're DMing out there and you're not doing something like this, and you find yourself struggling or having a hard time playing off of your character, your players, definitely try to do that. Figure out what they attach themselves to, and then just go with that.
Also in town, I feel like it should be mentioned that Petrie comes up to us and hands us the token that was given to Devatos, and then asks us to give it to Syndra and ask her what it was all about. So we received that token. What's cool about that was a little more NPC development in that Irame can now speak to Petrie almost completely,
Yep.
which was neat. And we also stopped to see Zindar, which, like I said before, was cool. New creature, half dragon.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and that's where we pick up the pirate quests. Are we ready for that? Were you expecting Quincy to jump on that so quickly, or?
Like I was saying, in Port Nine Zaro, I had no real expectations. What I did want to do was, I didn't want to remove any content for the sake of delivering a story that I wanted to tell. I wanted, at least in the city anyway, I feel that what better time to introduce new options for the party, and then that could very well take the adventure in different directions. It wouldn't have changed much for me if you guys decided to go to go out on the ocean and go pirate hunting.
Yeah, you seemed you didn't guide us away from it at all, which surprised me, because when Quincy was speaking, Irame was looking at him like, "What are you talking about?"
So
Irame
Quincy
was like, "What?"
It's interesting because this is a strange part for Quincy. we just came out of the jungle. The jungle wasn't all to Quincy, wasn't all it was cracked up to be. You know what I mean? Like he is interested from an archaeological perspective of like, going into these untamed places and
a little
finding
bushwhacking.
Yeah, a little bushwhacking,
Yeah.
a little bit of adventure and finding like some unknown tomb, that kind of thing. But having almost died and seeing his friends almost die a couple times, it was a little rougher. It was much rougher than what he thought it was. And I think the pirate quests were maybe appealing to him because he's familiar with ships. He's much more like he's just maybe a little bit more in his element there.
More comfortable.
Yep. And at the same time, even though that like being out in the jungle was a little bit of a reality check, I think surviving the jungle
Gave him
gave him
confidence.
confidence.
Do you think that pirate hunting is in the future of our main campaign, John? Or do you think we could do a spin-off or a side adventure on the seas or something?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't discount it altogether. It's the way I'm doing. I try to line everything up in a time frame and how long it would take for such things to happen. By now, we all saw what happened to one of the 3 ships, the Sturge, right? So that should give you an idea that time is going on. And while I don't have it on the calendar or anything like that, if I feel by now the next pirate ship, it's time to get captured, by the time you guys get back to Nyanzaro from this expedition, you know what I'm saying? If you guys are out there for another year in the jungle, then there is going to be progress made in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh my God, a year in the jungle.
I'm just saying, so, and that's how I'm going to base it.
It might be a little embarrassing for Quincy to speak so boldly and then to not deliver anything.
Oh, plus it sounds fun.
Oh yeah.
There's also the idea that we kind of joked around a little about it. Maybe off air, on air, I don't remember. But should you have a party wipe and you form a new party, you could very well open it right up where you're hunting one of those pirate ships. I mean, the options are endless. We could always. I think one thing you could be sure of is, regardless of the quest it is, we're always going to find cool, neat ways to tie everything together and try to bring everything in cohesively.
After we leave Zindar's, we get to Wakanga's villa. And the episode concludes with us entering the villa, and we are being watched by a veiled woman. We are unable to see her face. As a matter of fact, none of us noticed it, I think, except for Copernicus.
Zavril.
Oh, was it Zavril?
Yep.
My apologies. So Zavril notices a veiled woman watching us enter Wakanga's from a neighboring villa.
That's right.
And I completely missed that at the end of the episode. I don't know if I had gotten tired, and we were wrapping things up and I wasn't paying attention, or if I didn't know we were wrapping things up, because sometimes you surprise us, and I was just anxious to get in to the villa for dinner with Wakanga as Irame.
Right.
But I totally missed it until I re-listened to it, and I was like, oh, we've got a creep.
We've got a creeper.
Yeah.
That are you trying to ask me some details about what that scene was all about? Because I don't think anything's come of it yet.
No, nothing has come of it yet, and it was that's what really surprised me, was like, wow, I completely missed this. So many things have happened since then, and this was probably in the back of other players' minds, and I had no idea that it had happened.
It had been foreshadowed. It has to do with a story arc that is going on that I started on the side. It's just kind of like some not necessarily fluff. It's a little bit more tangible than fluff, for sure.
Would you be able to tell us those little times you foreshadowed that maybe I had also missed?
I can tell you that the woman, her name she's Jessamine. Merchant Prince Jessamine, who
Oh,
I've
that was
dropped
going
a
to be
few
my
times.
next question.
Yep, and pretty much the way I just wanted to, with that scene specifically, I wanted to get across the vibe to you guys that this area specifically, the Merchant Prince villas, how they're all close to each other. There's no real secrets, even in secret. So there's always somebody that has their eyes on what's going on and who's talking to who. I just kind of wanted to introduce the politics of the city a little bit. Just a little taste of it, I guess, with that. And that's all I was really going with that drop. And then later on, of course, you learned a little bit more about Jessamine.
Yes, we learn about the Utepka Society, which essentially is a society that keeps a checks and balances within
Exactly.
within Port Nyanzaro.
It's a secret society, if you will. I think we could call it that.
Yeah, and essentially they keep everybody in check by doling out tokens. And if you receive a token, that is a warning to you that that you've either done something that could potentially disrupt the order, or that your ways are I don't know, how would you say it? You are doing something.
You're essentially not playing by the rules of the land,
so
the law of the land.
So you're not playing by the rules. You receive a token, and the token isn't a promise of assassination, right? It's a warning that in the future you could be taken out by assassination to return order to the port.
Yep. And it's pretty much just, and I don't think it's as malicious as I made it sound. I think it's more so. I mean, the intent is definitely there, and I could completely understand why you would immediately bring it to a malicious tone. But I think the tone as a whole is more like you caught our attention. It's nothing personal, but don't you got to stop or we're gonna kill you, essentially, you know. But I don't think it's
not in a malicious
way, just in like a
business is business. It's for the sake of the people.
Well,
it's like,
well, through that we ultimately learn that there is in fact sanctioned murder, right?
Absolutely.
In Port Nyanzaru, where if this society has full control over it, if they deem you a threat, they will remove you.
Yes and no. They do still have to go through Jessamine to get sanctioned. It's just what Kanga did say, that they've never been denied a sanction. So take that as you will. But the merchant princes have their services. You actually accidentally stumbled upon Wakanga's services, which he sells potions and scrolls, and Jonthi sells jewelry and fine clothing and such. Each one has their own thing. And Jessamine, I think she sells. I can't remember specifically, but apart from what merchandise she handles, she also handles the sanctioning of assassinations.
All right, so after we enter Wakanga's villa, we have dinner. We sit down to dinner with him, and at dinner, I noticed that both Swaney and I had kind of misconceptions about certain parts of our story so far. So there were some things that Copernicus or Swaney, I don't know, player or character, when we were sitting down to dinner talking to Wakanga, we were talking about the death curse. And Copernicus says, well, why does that matter to us? And I don't know if as a player he forgot that we were supposed to, whether it was a ruse or not, be acting like we were actively trying to solve this death curse. And then he asks if Syndra herself is actually plagued with the death curse, which was something that we already knew.
Right. I think he had just forgotten.
I think so too.
It had been like 8 months or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, not that long.
No, but that happened
months?
at dinner, as well as Irame's misunderstanding of what the merchant princes were. I thought that the merchant princes, I didn't know they were natives of Chult. I thought they were
Colonialists.
yeah, I essentially thought that they were kind of the heads of all these shipping companies that had moved here, sort of thing. I had a misconception of what they were. Now,
I don't think all of them are. I mean,
Yep.
I'll have to look into it, but I wasn't necessarily thinking that every single one of them was one thing or another. I was just saying Wakanga specifically is definitely a Chultan.
and I think that you had expressed that before. I guess my question is, though, is as a DM, so during that dinner, a lot of things that you had already established were kind of questioned. Does that ever get frustrating for you as a DM?
I could see where it could open the door for other people to get frustrated
Not
by it.
necessarily at a specific player or make you but does it ever get frustrating when you're like, I gave you this guy's I gave you guys this information a couple times.
I think that that has to do with the ratio at which it happens and the amount of time. If I had just given you guys this information and then 10 minutes later you're asking me again, I'll let it go. But then 10 minutes later you're asking me again about it, I might be like, guys, seriously. But in these situations, so much time had passed in real life that it would be ridiculous for me to get frustrated. Even
Not only that, but we sort of downplayed our party's role in the whole solving of the death curse. We kind of Alarad was it Alarad that said right off the bat that, like, hey, I realize that you guys probably aren't going to be the ones to solve this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that we knew that we had to express that that's what Fane.
Right, it was behind closed door.
That's what we were working on for Syndra,
because
she's our patron.
Right,
she is, but she's a little removed.
I see where Arame's coming from. I see where Chrissy's coming from on this one, because if this happened just yesterday, I think if you go back to that moment when Alarad said that, he was very careful about telling you guys. He made sure the door was closed, nobody was listening. He kind of was like, look, for all intents and purposes, I don't think we're going to be the ones to do this. So instead, this is what the real mission's going to be. Wink, wink type deal.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think for Quincy, though, Alarad is a person of significance, and that's who he's taken his cue from. And it may be the same for Copernicus. I'm sure James just forgot. That's fine. But I also think that when Copernicus got hired by the 3Cs, he was answering more to Alarad.
Right, but I think Alarad would be straight up embarrassed if you guys blew his cover with that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Like,
if you're answering
Irme definitely would have shot
that's
Copernicus
true.
A look like this. It's already been established that this is Syndra's friend.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But I mean, we fucked up.
Yeah,
in that case, we fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's where we're going with it. Like, if it had just happened yesterday in real time, I think it would have been more fresh, and you probably would have been a little bit more careful to not to throw Alarad under the bus.
But even in game time, it had been probably at least a few weeks, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
and we've been through a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you're right. Maybe we would have been more on the ball. Our characters might have been more on the ball.
And you miss things. We've talked about this multiple times when you're always thinking about what the next thing you're going to say is, and you're trying to maintain staying in character and doing all these things. Sometimes you miss bits of information.
Yeah.
Now, I missed Wakanga being a Chultan native, probably because when we met him and all that stuff was happening, Irme, I had to be on the spot with role playing with him because he was interested in her, and I probably wasn't fully paying attention to all the information that was coming at me. Had I been, I would have realized that. But during dinner, John had to stop and be like, "Well, he actually is a native of
Right.
Well, I think if you were staring at a picture of him too, it would have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I did post the picture up on Tumblr and Instagram.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's from Chult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get stereotypical or anything.
no, but it's true. I guess that's what I mean. Like, I fucked up. Like, I wasn't paying attention. And I just was wondering from a DM's standpoint if that can be frustrating.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's not the way it works. Not with me, anyway. We're all ultimately in the end, while we're trying to play the game and have fun and take it as serious as we can within that realm. I think allowing yourself to get frustrated over something like that it's just not my style.
Yeah, and the GM honestly is going to have so much more information, and he's going to have such a clearer picture of everything that's going on that, like, you know, each player individually isn't going to catch everything.
Yes.
And if anything, it just opens another avenue for me to reiterate it later on down the road in a different way, which isn't a bad thing. It sometimes gives me a second chance to. I look at it more as an opportunity than a loss.
So after dinner, we move on to Wakanga's library. He takes his leave, I believe, right? And he allows us to explore the library where Quincy looks at a few maps and we look through a few books. We learned that only 100 years ago, actually, an undead horde had marched on the port. Only 100 years ago,
No,
right?
it wasn't the port.
Oh, it wasn't.
It
My
was
apologies.
Mesro. The lost city of Mesro. Mesra or Mesro? I don't remember. It's getting late.
But I thought that was worth mentioning because we've been talking a lot about the undead forces at work in Chult. And then we're off to the dino races.
Yep.
And all that was pretty clear. Only one question really there. I mean, it was awesome. We all had a lot of fun doing it. But was it difficult to organize the dino races, or was it laid out for you through the
there was
playbook pretty easily?
Yeah, that event's already in the book. A couple different versions of it. We had mentioned it in the episode. There was the Unchained event, which doesn't happen often because, quite frankly, dinosaurs are expensive to train, and you don't want them getting mangled and messed up or even killed in worst cases. So those kind of events are very rare and situational, which is why I was like, that's why I was pretty much.
How much did we cost Simpa for his ankylosaurus?
Well, enough to get us a fucking demerit.
Enough to gain the attention of the Atepka Society, that's for sure. Yeah. But I guess it is worth mentioning, but that's why I was like immediately so quick to be like, I think Zavril during the race was like, I'm gonna straight up attack somebody. I pretty much shut it down immediately because had I known it was going to even get to that point, I would have expressed the gravity of the situation in the clear differences of those Unchained events versus these events. You know, I think that's something that would have been made clear in the world that I didn't think was necessary.
It might have been more obvious,
right? Yeah. Which is worth explaining. You know, I wasn't trying to be a dick and shut down anybody's fun, but I was more so trying to stick with the nature of the campaign and in its setting. Other than that, the race mechanics were all right there. We did kind of skimp on them. Everybody was using a Triceratops when there are a few other options. For the sake of it, it was just I wanted it to be as streamlined as possible, so we weren't getting bogged by all too many mechanics, and we can just kind of get through it in more of an entertaining and fun way. That being said, though, these races go on, and you pretty much have two different options of approaching them. You can either participate or you can place bets passively. Right. And I think in that one session, in that one race, we were able to do both of those by Quincy placing in Copernicus betting passively, and everybody participating as an NPC rider.
Yeah, that makes it more fun, I think. You know, just everybody pick a horse or a dino in this case and run with it. You know.
Yeah, and should we ask Chuck what inspired your?
I don't think there was the voice.
Yeah.
Anything you've ever seen, really? With
no, I don't think so.
or...
I think it's one of those. Sometimes you just have voices like your whole life.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's one of those voices I've always had since I was a kid.
And if anybody's curious, we are referring to the what do you call it? The
Announcers.
Announcer voice.
race
yeah.
announcer. Yeah.
It's the same.
Can you
Actually,
do bidding?
I was a little cheap because it is the same auction voice
Yeah.
that I have. I use the same voice for auctions and for
It
announcers.
is probably the same guy doing it. To be fair.
I all my voices that I've had since I was a kid are mean.
Well, the alternative for the races could have been like Howard Cosell, Better Off Dead, like in Better Off Dead, when the guys roll up next to him every time they want to race him. You know,
Yeah. And
here he is, the fierce opponent.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that doesn't have quite the same energy. You know.
Right. It was good. We all had a lot of fun with it. It definitely added to the excitement, I think.
Yeah, these episodes gave us a lot of insult. Wow. These
Something
episodes,
on your mind?
yeah, these episodes gave us a lot of insight into the culture of Chult and how things are run in the port itself. We experienced in the following episode, the beginning, we experienced the gauntlet or the prisoner's run.
Yep.
That was also represented very well. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, that's one of that is one of the events that also happens in Nyan Zaru. And the other thing is not that I wanted to really take everything and kind of hit you guys with it all at once, but this was kind of a celebratory moment in Nyan Zaru, and a lot of these events kind of coincide with that sort of Old Homes Day celebration going on.
Right.
So I felt it was just not only natural, but also a great way to bring out some of those city events before you guys went back into the jungle for who knows how long, you know. So I thought it was cool. I really took the opportunity. I seized the opportunity to try to get the most out of Nyan Zaru, essentially, and without kind of overdoing it. Hopefully.
No, I'd agree. I think we got a great picture of the city, and I think that helped also. Like us being in it gave us a little bit more of a picture of each of our characters as well.
Within it. Yep.
Yeah.
A prisoner run might be a fun one-off, too. Don't you think?
Yeah.
That might be a fun one.
Yep.
All of us colored a different color. We can run through a prisoner run.
Yeah.
So like what, the Running Man or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole episode is us just trying to get to the end.
Yeah. See who makes it.
Then we find ourselves at the refuse pit, where Copernicus kind of has a plan. He puts an invisibility spell on Quincy and Irame.
Mm-hmm.
And we hold back, and he goes forward with Zavril to face Clem. And Clem brings with her
Just a hired hand.
a hired hand.
Gladiator.
Yeah.
So not a aspiring gladiator,
Yep.
essentially.
This episode sort of wraps up kind of what I felt was the main kind of themes of these 3 episodes, which was experiencing the port and resolving this sort of Copernicus issue.
Oh yeah, it's like together with starting with the investigation into Copernicus.
Yeah.
And then us getting into Copernicus, all kind of jumping into Copernicus's drama or trouble or whatever.
Yep.
Sort of brings it full circle.
It brings it full circle. It does, because if you look at it, in episode 21, we all have our reactions to the shit Copernicus is putting us in. And then at the end of episode 23, or, beginning, middle, and end, honestly, the full episode, we're in the shit that Copernicus brought to us. And I think it solidified us as a group. We were doubtful a little bit of Copernicus, but every single one of us followed his instruction to a T. We became invisible. We held back, we followed his plan. After the combat began, he gave us direction, which was to not let Clem go, and Irame immediately followed that direction. She thought that was important. And Quincy, I actually have the quote down that you used for your inspiration at this moment, and it was, "Those who face Copernicus will die." And I think you chose those words because, maybe to scare them a little bit as well. But that was like a full-on support. You could have said anything. You could have directed it at the group. You could have, but you were saying that, like, we're standing here with him. Yeah. And I thought that was neat. We all really stuck with him and listened to his direction during that tough combat. And it was a very tough combat. Zavril and Copernicus both fell. There were multiple death save throws. Some of them failed.
I think going back, like, I just want to agree with you in that it was neat that we all kind of followed Copernicus's lead, because it shows as a group that we recognize that this is it's his show.
Yep.
This is like, this encounter is Copernicus's show, and we're there to support him.
Yes.
Like, in every sense of the word.
Yep.
And that's what we were doing.
Yep.
And almost to a fault. I mean, Irame killed somebody.
Oh yeah,
that she didn't know.
Against our own wishes. Or whatever, like against our own sort of, maybe outside of our comfort, we did it, but we did it.
Yeah. Yep. She killed someone that she didn't know, who never had any malintent towards her personally. I think that was a good example of. I'm sure I could find ways to justify it in Irame's character, but that was just a good example of, like, combat. You're in combat, and that's what happens. But would Irame have put someone down? Really?
I think there's another question in there, and I think it's not so black and white. I think you could say in that situation, Irame did put somebody down. Now the question is there room for resentment to grow over it? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that going to come back to haunt Irame and in turn maybe spark a bit of resentment towards Copernicus for it?
Yeah, how are you going to deal with it?
Right.
Yeah.
And how's it going to affect their relationship?
Because you would think, I don't know, because I'm not a killer or a murderer, but I always thought of it to a lot
Want
of times.
that on record.
To be a bit spontaneous, and then it kind of creeps in after and begins to really take a deep-rooted,
Yeah, like in the moment, shit just gets out of control.
Right, and it's almost a spontaneous decision to murder somebody, but then over time afterwards, that's when it starts to really take effect. And we could be looking at something like that with Irame. Could be months from now before Irame really starts to feel the effects of that fated moment at the refuse pit.
Now, to defend it, I mean, if Irame was fully, wits about her thinking while doing this, which is a good example of maybe when I should have been talking about what Irame was thinking and what was happening. She very well could have been thinking, I might kill this person, but if I don't do this, what's going to happen? Is the whole flaming fist going to come after us? Could we all perish at their hand?
Yeah, there was a lot more at stake than just the death rolls.
Absolutely.
If she had gotten away, there was so many layers of.
If I let her go, could Copernicus die later?
Yep.
I like to think that Irame was thinking all of these things and was making these decisions, but it's definitely I should have included that, because I left it after. I was like, fuck.
I think it's fine to express that retroactive.
Yeah.
I mean, because even as humans, when we act, like Jay pointed out earlier, you act spontaneously and oftentimes look back and try to figure out, like, not only like process how you're dealing with it, but also maybe try to figure out what your motivations were. Like, you might not know them in the moment.
Yes.
And then you think back to it and you're like, well, okay, this is what was going on. It's part of the process.
Yep.
And I certainly think there's plenty of room to where if you miss an opportunity, if you feel that you miss an opportunity to introduce those kind of thoughts or feelings, there may be a way that you could introduce them later.
Oh, absolutely. With little to no, sometimes even with more of a drastic effect.
Yeah, when you have time.
Yep. I think stuff like that, if put on simmer and start kind of digging it back up a little bit. It depends on the situation, but I think that kind of stuff can be awesome, you know.
And I think it played out exactly as you thought it would. You introduced a conflict, and instead of it splitting up the group, we came together to solve it.
Mm-hmm. We got a little bit more information from Copernicus's background with it. You know, and that's what it is. You know, everybody has all your characters have backgrounds and story, and you know, we've gone through this before, and everybody I think by now is accustomed to the method at which we try to deliver background and stuff like that. And I think it went really well at the refuse pit for Copernicus and for everybody else.
Yeah, and as far as combats go, it was a good, tense combat.
Yeah,
You know, the
that guy
outcome-
was tough.
Yeah,
A rugged dude.
Yeah.
the outcome was uncertain. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a fun one.
That's it. I mean, we end the episode. So episode 23 concludes with us pretty sure Clem is dead.
I like these city episodes, and I like the character development that happens. I like the stuff that we learn about each other. I've said it already, but I'm just concluding with that.
Yeah. But as far as prepping these city episodes, though, I was in no real hurry. I was enjoying every bit of it. There's still quite a few plots that I'd like to carry out, like the orphans and such.
Yeah. I like
was
the
it-
orphans.
Yeah, there's a few side stories going on still that.
Oh yeah, as a player, like I am totally of the style of meandering through. You know, I could spend tons of time meandering through like one phase in the city and learning everything we could, and then spending a ton of time in the jungle. Whereas like James, for example, like he always wants to get to the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm in between you two.
Yep.
For sure. I can be patient. I'm probably as impatient as James, but I just don't express it. I'm kind of I can go along with whatever's happening. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just have a different perspective on it. I don't necessarily look at the overall progression of. I look at progression differently, I guess. I look at progression as character development, character building, story development.
Yeah, I always even if an episode is heavy character development or role playing, I still feel like we've absolutely accomplished something at the end of every one.
Absolutely.
And I think I align with Jay on this, is that like that to me is it's not about getting through the campaign.
Right, getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It's
Although
the journey.
maybe the one exception is when we were playing Out of the Abyss. Because I was definitely getting fatigued with the Underdark while we were there.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that, especially a kind of high stress. Out of the Abyss was a high stress campaign.
Yeah,
all
it was
around.
like we had to save the world. Not saying that solving the death curse isn't a huge responsibility.
No, I think it's the perspective of your characters in the Out of the Abyss in comparison to Tomb of Annihilation. In Out of the Abyss, you guys were looking at the world from. You guys were looking at having to save the world from. Not necessarily. At first, you were for the first. How long you were not even thinking about saving the world. It was more so
Who are we?
escaping the people who were chasing you through these alien underground tunnels. You know,
Yeah.
that's just a stressful, claustrophobic,
And before we hit the
anxiety-ridden
Underdark,
situation.
and before we hit the Underdark, we weren't even positive of who we were.
Right. So I think there is definitely that campaign is definitely built for stress, I think.
All right. I now conclude this meeting of the Midnight Society.
That's it.
That's it.
All right.
All right, everybody. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us for another exciting bonus episode of the Behind the Screen. If, once again, we say it, if you've got any questions about anything that we're doing, or if you just want to tell us a story, or if you have a story that you want to tell us about one of your games, write us in at natty19podcast@gmail.com.
People might not be able to hear you from like way far away. Look at, they're only speaking in the house.
Well, we're talking in microphones, so they can transmit us to the world.
Fox.
Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you so much. And as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Christy. And I bid you good night.
Till next time.
Want to say good night?
Good night.
Want to say it in the microphone?
Come on, live your lines to the dead.
If that's not creepy.
And also, we do not have camp horses anymore. We do not have camp horses anymore.
Hey,